Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is May 9th, YC126, and this is the Eve Universe Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's it going, guys? Settle on in. Welcome if you're new. Like the stream. Before we begin, I do want to say thank you to Bash for his 5 gifted subs right as we were getting, or 5 gifted memberships right as we were getting started. Very kind of you. And we did get the SOE logo now for those of you who are members, which there's more of you now than ever. How's it going, guys? We do have a bit to cover today. Yesterday CCP did a live stream where they went over the dev blog and more of the details from there and changed some of the details in there. So we're gonna look at some of the stuff that we learned from there. And also we have the monthly economic report, which I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure if there's much to say on the matter right now. I can't remember if last month we said anything needed to be looked at this month, but like we're kind of in a holding pattern at the moment, which is fair. We'll probably look at commodities and stuff, but I think the most important news of the day is the fact that I've got my new merch on. I've got my new Mauro mug, which Mauro, of course, is the corporation in the Convocation of Empyreans, and I've got my Mauro shirt and my Mauro mug. Thank you very much to Ari Danica and Korjova, Bad Boy Smooth, for hooking me up with this stuff. It's very awesome. The invited stuff is coming soon, but yeah, you can get this stuff for yourself as well. And it supports me in some way that I'm sure. No, just kidding. No, I mostly am just like really stoked that people would want the merch more than anything. Like that's very humbling and honoring and all that stuff. And I like wearing it. And we also they got one for my son too, a matching one, and he was super stoked and is wearing it to school right now, so that way he can go around and brag about things. And I find that incredibly adorable. All right, that's sentimentality over. Thank you for my digression. Like the stream for the guineas. Let's go ahead and start jumping into things. Mostly today, I do want to cover my thoughts from the video yesterday, the live stream yesterday. It was not very long. It's worth going to CCP's Twitch stream and checking out the full thing. I do have some slideshows courtesy of oh no, let's go look. Imicus Navy issue on Reddit has several of the slides from there that we'll use to reference rather than having to go through the whole video ourselves. But I also have some takeaways. This is mostly a follow-up from my previous couple of videos where we've discussed Equinox. So if you haven't watched those yet, it's worth going back and watching that for like the broad strokes of things. But I do want to cover some of the stuff that I got and I learned from watching the presentation. First and foremost, we did get a confirmation about how resources work in, or more importantly, the difference between the 3 different resources. And this is kind of what I suspected, but, you know, this is the confirmation of it, which is that we have power, workforce, and reagents. Power is something that must come in the solar system that it is in, right? So you get power from the star, which not all, you know, like not all stars put out the same amount of power. You could have a weak, piddly white dwarf or whatever and might not be able to get very much power for it. Or you might get one of those like really like a BO blue or G5 yellow giant that puts out just a ton of output of solar power, you know? And then on top of that, you have gas, storm, and plasma, with gas providing the least amount of power, and I assume plasma being the most amount of power. But the power in the system is that system's hard cap on how good that system can be. You can't bring in power from anywhere else. You can. It only is gotten from sources of power within that exact system. So you'll want to skyhook your different power. Every single gas, storm, and plasma planet will want to skyhook. And those skyhooks are not going to be as disruptible by outside forces, as we'll get to when we get to it. 07, everybody. Then the second one is workforce. Workforce is handled on a logistics level, or like a strategic level. This is you missed a lot of shilling, Nika. The workforce is a resource that can be transmitted automatically from one system to another, okay? Now, we'll see this, but the new Sovereignty Hub has all these different upgrades that it can have. And so one of the upgrades that it can have is the ability to transmit workforce. One of the things that they talked about was the fact that any given system can receive workforce from 3 different systems, but can only send workforce to one system, okay? So 3 different inputs, 1 output. And this way you can actually daisy chain different systems to transmit. You know, if you have a lot of population in system A, you can go system A to system B to system C to system D. System D is where you need them to be, more or less. But the interims, all of those iHubs or all of those sovereignty hubs require you to have this ability to transfer, you know, a transfer hub, basically. So that one, this way, this one's exporting it to this one's exporting it to this one, so on and so forth. And other inputs can flow in, but I think that any given one of these chain can only lead out to one other system, okay? So there's going to be a lot of logistical consideration for how you lay out your empire when it comes to workforce. And workforce must come from oceanic, barren, and temperate planets, which I'm assuming that workforce is going to be lowest. Well, actually, if we're just going to be working, look at this. I think that what we're seeing here is that this is the order, actually. And yes, it actually says so. Output by type, and it has an arrow pointing up. So in the course of gas, or in the course of power, we have gas being the lowest output, storm being next, then the sun itself is next, and then plasma planets can output more power than even a star. So those systems with plasma planets are going to become really, really important for just the ability to have tons of upgrades in a single system. Yes, you can daisy chain them. Workforce, the lowest one will be barren, and then oceanic, and then temperate as far as where you can get it. Right. We'll look at the daisy chain when we get there. Reagents are actually hauled. Reagents are the only physical object. Reagents are the only ones that can be rated. Reagents is the output of this system. And reagents are what's going to be important to make a lot of the things run. This is the fueling of pieces. Okay, there are 2 different reagents. We've talked about this already. One is from lava planets. One is from ice planets. Everything needs all of it. If it needs, or both of them. So you're going to need both a lava planet and an ice planet if you're going to want to supply things. It's not enough. You can't just have a lot of one or the other. So again, systems with lava and ice together in the same system are very good, especially if they have, in addition to that, gas, storm, or whatever. And at least, and honestly, the workforce one is almost the least important, right? Because you can import workforce from another system if need be, right? So now this is where things get kind of weird. Obviously, we're 2 months away. These features aren't finished yet. And you can tell that by the way that some of this stuff was described. One of the things that seems to be in flux and may have just recently changed, because all of the slides seem to suggest, and the dev blog yesterday or the other day seems to suggest that reagents are required for ongoing consumption for the Sovereignty Hub and the Metanox. However, it was confirmed during the stream and then later confirmed down here by CCP Convict that reagents will only be used by the Sov Hub in the process of onlining sovereignty upgrades. So power and workforce are going to be necessary for ongoing operations of a SOV hub, but the reagents will only be needed to brought to that iHub or the SOV hub when it's time to turn on an upgrade. Now, what's important about that is that, so power is difficult to necessarily disrupt because the power is in the same system, right? You might be able to go and hit their skyhook. If you take down a skyhook in that around their storm planet, for example, you're going to shut down a lot of their subsystems, a lot of their SOV upgrades, because that's powering a lot of them. And then when they get that back running again, once they have enough power to run them again, they have to now turn them back on. That's where that renewed cost of the reagents come from. I also think the Metanox moon drill does require ongoing cost, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. The big other thing, though, is, well, if these aren't going to require ongoing costs or necessarily, like, what's the point of having all of this excess? The other big thing is these are now also going to be commodities. Commodities means that there's going to be NPC buy orders. So since these are the one thing that you can raid out of these systems, these are the stuff that we can, as external people, come and steal from the skyhooks, because you can't steal PI and you can't steal workforce or power. You can steal reagents. And so you can either use that to power your own Metanox moon drill, or you can just sell it to a vendor, right? So there's always going to be kind of an outflow of these reagents. It also means that there's a cost floor to these reagents, right? This is actually kind of important because, like, let's say I want to have a low-sec moon drill. Well, I'm going to need these reagents. So that means the cost of that moon drill is the cost of these reagents. If the reagents were only used in onlining things, and they're gained over time, then over time, those reagents will just, like, build up. And, you know, supply and demand, there's too much supply of these reagents, not enough demand in the uses of Metanoxes. So the price of the reagents would just crash as there's more people trying to sell. There's more reagents to sell than there are people that need it to buy. However, with a commodity, since there is an NPC buy orders for it, that just sets a hard floor. So you won't be able to buy reagents very easily for less than the NPCs are, right? So that's an important piece to this. And the fact that these are commodities is pretty cool, because it means that you can rate it without having to worry about the fact that what to do with it necessarily once you have it. It is worth noting that these things are potentially going to be pretty bulky, they said. So that's why we have all those new reagent haulers. So with your raids, you're going to need to bring haulers to help haul this stuff away, which has its own fun. But yeah. The other big thing that we learned was about the grace period, right? This was the big question. Wait, hold on. Oh, a new ISK faucet. How do they offset that faucet? Well, they've been adding new ISK faucets here and there. I mean, they're also adding new ISK faucets in the rats, in the anoms and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. We'll actually talk about the idea of, like, growth and what this all means in the long term after we go over the details, because I do have some actual, like, meta thoughts about all of these things and its impact on the economy, and or it's like the universe as a whole. So we'll get to that, like, after we get over the details. Now, so for the transition, are the system upgrades more or less permanent? Do they degrade like a pirate beacon thing? Is it just always on, or does it run for a week and have to be repurchased? No, it is on. And in fact, I don't even know if something has to be purchased or loaded, but, like, so it is on until it's no longer being powered, right? It has an ongoing cost. You don't have to restart it up every month, I don't think. Let me check my numbers. I'm not having any connection issues or streaming health issues, I don't think. Let me check. Yeah, everything's showing up fine here. Okay. So the next thing I've got is, oh yeah, sorry, the November thing. Okay. So the expansion happens in June, right? Yeah. So the expansion happens in June. On the day of the expansion, every iHub and every TCU that is in space will be removed from the game. There will no longer be infrastructure hubs or TCUs in the game. Now, how this gets refunded, that sort of stuff has not, those details haven't quite been given out yet, but generally speaking, they have made good with like, what they'll probably do is something along the lines of 100% reprocessing on anybody who has something that they have, and like purchase orders for the BPOs or something like that for people that might have it. So the SOV hub will appear in the system in a location that CCP has not disclosed yet. However, based on pictures and my thoughts, chances are it will be near the sun, because the the SOV hub is the solar collector as well. So chances are it'll be near the sun, but they want to explicitly make it so these things can't be on grid with another structure, with with a player structure or something like that. So they'll be the ones putting it down. Hopefully they do their best, or they don't accidentally put 1DQ Sovereignty Hub on a Keepstar grid or something. Do the Sovereignty Hub actually need reagents to keep the upgrades going, to just in startup costs? So that's what I'm saying. Like, written down, it said it was ongoing, but in the clarification here, it says reagents will only be used by SOV hubs in the process of online sovereignty upgrades. They won't be an ongoing part of their upkeep, which will only require power and workforce. Now, they don't get back to it a little bit in the explanation of the video, but they do kind of suggest the fact that the balance of this is disruption in power and workforce will shut off the upgrade. And if you shut off the upgrade, even if it's temporarily, then they will need to turn it back on using reagents. Now, I think, and they haven't said it specifically in either way, I do think it is true that the Metanox moon drill, I still think that the Metanox moon drill does require ongoing fuel. Was there a picture of that? See, that's so weird, because even this UI suggests that it's going to be ongoing fuel costs. So this must be something that is absolutely changing, or like in the middle, in flux, right? Depends on the upgrade. Oh, so some upgrades are going to have an ongoing cost? Is that why there's confusion about the two? Or do you want to walk this back completely? Yeah, because yeah, okay, yeah. See, this seems to show that there's an ongoing. Okay, all strategic upgrades have an ongoing fuel cost, like in Celebex. So like Sino jammers, Sino beacons, and Celebex jump gates. Those things will require an ongoing fuel of the 2 resources, whereas normal ones like the pirate detection array is just you online it. Why does it say upkeep? Well, okay, well, they did suggest that a lot of this stuff is stand-in graphics, but so like in theory, oh no, yeah, in theory, all of these upkeep costs for like standard pirate detection array should be 0 instead of 200, right? And that's one of the reasons why this is probably in flux, is because the exact details of this stuff is designed to be that like the guy who built this UI doesn't know whether or not there's going to be design choices made about those sorts of things, right? The business rules that strategic upgrades have cost and non-strategic upgrades doesn't have cost. That rule might not have been decided, or maybe it's changed since this UI was originally designed and this feature was originally designed. So you build it to be flexible, right? So that this is all stand-in graphics. You could easily just simply say, put a 0 in the upkeep costs for everything that isn't a strategic upgrade. So that's why you see it this way, because the people that are building these tools don't know those business rules yet. Just keep that in mind. This is important because like I think we talked about this last time. People were freaking out because the planets didn't match and thought that this meant that there was going to be a planetary rebalance too. Not at all. So either way. So yeah, sovereignty upgrades like Sino suppression, Sino jammers, etc. will have a ongoing fuel costs. Now, the other interesting thing, we can look at the different, we'll get there actually, hold on. So the way it works is on, what is it? The 11th, was it? When is the release date? I can't remember the exact release date for the Equinox expansion. '11th. Yeah, June 11th. So on June 11th, every iHub, every TCU will be gone. And what will be in every system in sovereignty will be one of these sovereignty hubs. Okay. Future sovereignty hubs will have to be built and deployed just like iHubs are now. But wait, is that even right? You have to deploy iHubs, right? You build and deploy iHubs. I'm not having like a moment of madness with faction warfare. You actually destroy the iHubs in nullsec, right? I just want to double check. One of those moments of madness. Will there be NPC versions of like iHubs in faction warfare? Probably not yet. Yes, you launch them and then Entosis them. That's right. And that does remind me, like they did say that the Entosis fighting and all that stuff will still remain. So when you wake up on the 11th, you will have a sovereignty hub. But that sovereignty hub is your iHub. Okay? Right? Like, first of all, the TCU, for those of you who are confused, like the territorial claim unit just says that's who you, like, that's who owns the SOV. It's the iHub that gives it all of its upgrades. So the TCU is not really that important. To the point where most of us have largely forgotten about it. It's been kind of a joke, the fact that sometimes the TCU and the iHub can be two different things, you know, groups or whatever. But the point of the matter is that the iHub is what's important. The iHub is more or less what's getting replaced, although systems that had a TCU but not an iHub, I think, still get a sovereignty hub put in. The point of the matter is that mechanically, though, that sovereignty hub is your iHub, okay? But it'll be like, hey, we would like to upgrade you to sovereignty, we're calling it 4.0, whatever. Whenever you're ready, hit this button, right? And so it starts out with a button. It starts out working in legacy mode. This is what Convict is explaining here. So it'll be in legacy mode, and then there'll be a button. And when you click that button, it converts your entire sovereignty system through the sovereignty hub that into Equinox mode, right? And I think that this is on a, yeah, this is on a per Sov hub basis, right? So you can turn it from legacy mode to sovereignty or to Equinox mode, but not back. Once it's that, then it's there. That's when it'll require power, personnel, and reagents to do things. Up until that point, just having the upgrades installed and the correct ADMs will allow them to work, right? Once that gets flipped over, you do require the power, the personnel, and the reagents. So you'll likely want to build your skyhooks in the system first, so that way you have the supply set up, and then press the button and wire it all up and watch the magic happen. And you're going to want to do this ASAP because the upgrades are much, much better. They have basically all of the same upgrades as before, plus some really very interesting new ones that you can choose from, okay? Now, it is worth noting, as per the title of this video, and Satonia can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I was 100% wrong about the type of star being necessary for kinds of upgrades. I think that every upgrade is actually available in every single sovereignty hub at all times. It is just a matter of whether or not you have the power, the workforce, and the reagents to run it. This does change a lot of strategic things. Like, for instance, right now you need to have a strategic index of a certain amount to be able to place things like Sino jammers and Syllabexes, etc. But with this system, it is likely possible that you'll be able to online those things much earlier and not require like and do other things like modify and select your mining without necessarily getting your mining index up, right? Yeah, the type of stars does not matter at the moment for upgrades. However, different suns provide different power ratings. Correct. So like the value of different stars isn't this topology of the system like I was talking about before, where like, oh, you need to have a blue star in order to have this upgrade. Rather, it's the more powerful the star, the better the power you get out of it, the more devices you can power, right? Blue suns like AO provide the most power, while white suns like white dwarfs provide the least. Wouldn't a BO provide more than I thought? So you guys keep going. Hold on. I need to talk with you guys about this stuff, because I thought that the AO blue star was like the weakest of the three. I thought O1 was the biggest. Maybe not necessarily the most powerful. I don't know. Whatever. Not for now, I suppose. Hold on. But yeah. So that controls what kind of things you can have on it, but not necessarily which upgrades. Will reagents be collected by everyone that blew the structure like PI, or just the owners of the structure? Like, who can you how can you control access to take stuff out of the skyhook without attacking it first? You mean like how do you control who can legitimately take out of a skyhook? That's a good question. So next, oh, right. So you have this thing set up and you have the button. The one thing is that when the winter expansion comes, which they've kind of accidentally half confirmed that the winter expansion is in November, which, I mean, not a shocking surprise that that's the date, the month that they're targeting. But in November, with the winter expansion, the grace period will be over, and any sovereignty hubs that have not clicked that button will have that button clicked for them, and there will be no more sovereignty systems operating on the old system. Every sovereignty hub will require power, personnel, and reagents after that. The plan is to have an ACL, which will control who can pick it up. Excellent. Wait, an ACL? So you could have somebody outside of the owning group be able to do it. Well, that's good. I like that. That's probably going to be important. Anywho, so let's see. The next thing I learned is actually the rating process altogether. Do we have a picture of that? No. So we were looking at this the other day, and I got corrected for it, but like the
extract.
Actually, I don't even need. Where is it? Yeah, this. So this part, okay, let's look at this now with what we've learned. What we're seeing here is actually the hack in progress, okay? It's worth noting that this Raven does not have a hacking module. There's no hacking involved in the actual hacking. This percentage that we see at the bottom here is actually the shields, okay? So what we didn't see is that before this guy got here, he had already attacked this skyhook and got it down to 10% shields, or not the skyhook itself, but this reagent silo, which is like a separate target on the skyhook. So you can target the reagent silo, shoot it, you knock it down to 10%, which doesn't sound like it's going to be that difficult to do. And then once you've completed that, then you link into it, and that's what starts the 9-minute timer. And it's what starts alerting people about what's going on. And it also ignites it locks you to 1,000 meters per second. And it puts up, and this was the biggest one, it puts up a localized Sinojammer while you're doing the hack. Now, there's a lot of questions about this, and this is one of the things that they seem very sketchy about. And by far, the thing that was the most controversial in chat during this time, Sinojamming is extraordinarily powerful. So, and it has a lot of side effects. Like anytime you can tell a player that they can Sinojam something, like with little warning, they can use it for all kinds of different tricks. So we'll have to see how the specifics about this goes. But basically, the idea is that while the Skyhook hacking is in process, that grid is Sinojammed. So they can respond to it and come and get you, but they have to warp to it the good old-fashioned way. Now, you yourself cannot leave 30 kilometers away from the Skyhook reagent silo, which, remember, this is different than the Skyhook itself. The Skyhook is huge. Skyhook reagent silo, not huge. Sorry. So, you have to stay within 30 kilometers of the Skyhook reagent silo. Otherwise, you cancel the hack and, you have to start over. I wonder if more than one person can target and hack at the same time. From my understanding, it is like the ESS, which, as far as I know, only one person can be hacking it at one time. And then once it is done, it just jettisons into space. So then anybody can pick up the thing that gets jettisoned. It's also worth noting that this is a big piece of it. All of these pictures that we see here in these videos, these are the iHub upgrades, right? And in the same way, when we look at, are they going to show it? Yeah. This here is, you can see like this right here. These don't have anything in it right now, probably, it looks like. But if we look at this one, look, this one is full of ice. What is it? The hyperionic, something ionic ice. So this one is primed for raiding, and I can tell that just by looking at it. Isn't that cool? That is kind of cool, in my opinion. So we can see, like, this one's full of ice. Did they show the magma one? I don't know. Maybe they show it in a different place. But, in fact, I think, don't they show it? Oh, well. Oh, that's probably magma right there. You can see it glowing. So, any chance notification theft will be kept off the ESI. I mean, chances are, look, CCP is very bad at putting things on the ESI, so things tend to not be on the ESI before they are on the ESI. I wouldn't be surprised if nothing involving the Skyhooks were on the ESI. We'll see. Yeah. So here's an image of the routing process, right? So I can have my workforce on a system here, and then I can have one or more systems that are functioning as just transport systems to get it to the system with a bunch of stuff that I want to put it in. Or I can just move it the one hop if the adjacent system is energy abundant, as they say. And remember, this is not done by players, but this is infrastructure, right? If this system here is your home system, then now I can attack any system along this route in order to try to shut down your flow of personnel and begin to shut down your services in your main system. You get what I'm saying? Like, that's one of the things that's very interesting about this. While it's true that only the reagents can be attacked to loot for money, a lot of this introduces new infrastructure that can function as points of failure and vectors for attack. The Sovereignty Hub establishes sovereignty for the owning alliance once anchored and online in a system. As Sutonia pointed out, you're going to have to anchor it by plumping it down and then online it by intosising it. Replacement for both the infrastructure hub and the territorial claim unit. A variety of optional upgrades will be installed. So if you can see here, this is what it looks like with no upgrades installed. So all these other pretty pictures, this this here? No, this isn't it. Yeah, everything that we're seeing here, these are all individual upgrades. So like this one here is likely the personnel transport one, right? Like this means that this place is able to move personnel to other systems or from other systems. You know, hard to guess what some of these are, but like there is the one where it shows the minerals lighting up. Chances are those are the ones that are controlling what ore is available. There'll be a series of pings that go. We're going to go into the pings. Hopefully the resources this resource update brings are relevant enough to cause some movement and conflict. That took too long to online. It should be 1 week. Way to shake up null on a 6-month timeline. Wait, what? What do you mean by too long to online? I don't think it takes any time at all to online it. Requires both power and workforce to operate, to upgrade to all required upkeep that consumes resources. A variety of optional upgrades can be installed to customize local resources, PvE, logistics, and several other aspects of player-controlled space. When Equinox is released, there will be a generous grace period, blah, 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 blah. Oh. Well, the 6-month timeline, like, people are going to be very incentivized to switch over ASAP. I don't think that the fact that people can use the old sovereignty system is going to cause them to not shake things up, right? Because, like, if you're in a system, if you're in an area of space that's now going to be useful based on the new rules, like, not switching over isn't going to stop you. Like, it might prevent somebody, like, there might be like a smaller group or something like that that doesn't want to have to deal with the bullshit, and so ride it out as long as they can. But like, this is honestly a very, very common thing for CCP. I think anytime they have done a sovereignty update like this, they have given at least like, or I think that like the entirety of it, let's say when they put in hypercores, or not hypercores, but structure cores, you know, they often put very generous grace periods into these things. And, you know, you'd be silly to not flip over to the new system. But the reason why they put these long grace periods is because otherwise people will complain that, like, they're being pressured to do something right now. You know, these null groups, like, null groups don't do anything in a couple of weeks when it comes to this level of planning. And to make them rush things in, especially since a lot of this is permanent infrastructure, I think that would be pretty shitty to do. You know, you want people to be able to kind of get a feel for what's going on, make a plan, and execute it. And these groups, honestly, a lot of null groups have multi-year plans already, so this is already shaking up their plans. For the most part, this is just an opportunity to be like, no one can say that they didn't give enough of a grace period. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest focus. Pulling the rug out from under. They want nullsec to be very happy with this change, right? So like, taking all of this like awesome work and then putting a negative spin on it because you also are pulling the rug out from underneath them because haha nullsec. I don't know if that feels good. All right. So let's look at some upgrades. Why are people wanting to switch? Individual prospecting upgrades for different materials: tritanium, pyrite, mexilon, isogen, noxium, zydrine, and megasite. This right here is really big for people, okay? This is why people are saying, like, the era of prosperity is coming back. And this is one of the things that makes me extraordinarily nervous and has got me thinking a lot about scarcity, the future, these changes, and we'll talk about that when we're done with all the different stuff. But what we're seeing here is, like, when they went into scarcity and they changed the DNA of the materials, they made it so it was basically impossible to get isogen and Mexilon, or sorry, Megasite outside of Losec and Pochvin, and Morphite and one other thing, Zydrine in Nullsec. And of course, Tritanium was mostly common in Highsec and Pyrite. But this was part of the whole thing about like moving things around and making people have to know one place has all the resources. They have like put in relief valves, for instance, the border ore and the AO Blue Star ore explicitly spawns stuff that is not normal for your band of space. Lowsec and nullsec stuff spawns in highsec and lowsec stuff spawns in nullsec, etc. But those are like few and far between. What this is allowing these empires to do is really lay out their systems, and we're going to see this throughout the whole thing. But they can make it where each system is important in the fact that they do different things. Like this is our Tritanium system. This is our Mexilon system. This is our high level ratting system. Here's our low level ratting system, etc., etc. And that's very interesting. But what this does mean is that an empire with enough breadth and desire could, in theory, become completely self-contained and self-sustaining again, which is a bit of a risk, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Now, this does say it spawns anomalies comprised of the new ore type, which is abundant in the desired mineral type. CCP has confirmed that these new ore types will be mined and reprocessed with the relevant crystal types, right? They're not adding new ore types. Hold on. Let's see. We go to the notion. I should have. So yeah, here's the mining crystals, right? So you can see that coherent and variegated mine all of the low-sec stuff. Complex mines null-sec for the most part. And dark ochre is in the AO, is the border ore stuff. So, and the ones that are in blue are the ones in the AO ones. So these are the new ones that they've added in. As you can see, like yttrium will spawn in highsec, but since it has a low-sec mineral, it uses a low-sec crystal in order to mine it. So in the same way, like if you spawn new ore that has tritanium in it, it'll mine with simple crystals. If it has isogen in it, then it'll probably be coherent. If it has Zydrine in it, then it'll probably be complex, right? Each mineral. What site is this, please? This is so. I have a Notion that I maintain with a bunch of useful resources, including infographics. That's the link to the actual infographic page itself, but you can navigate throughout the Notion. Okay. So these new ore types will only appear in anomalies spawned by a prospecting upgrade. Each prospecting upgrade has an improved variant which locates anomalies faster. Infrastructure, variety of strategic upgrades, sinusoidal suppression, upgrade, which enables the jammer to be anchored. Navigation upgrade allows Sino beacons to be anchored. Advanced logistics network upgrade, which allows Encelebix jump gates to be anchored. And super capital construction facility upgrade, which allows the onlining of stand-up super capital shipyards at Sodio Engineering Complex Systems. So all these things that used to be based off of the strategic index that you used to have to wait up to a month in a new system in order to be able to get some of these things, they are now going to just be upgrades that you have to power. And then combat anomalies. Auto press the button. Oh, yeah. I mean, you can feel that way, and I'm sure some people do, but this is what's happening. Pirate detection arrays, which have a chance to spawn combat anomalies in the system. So this is what's interesting, right? Because like right now, the more you rat, the bigger of a pirate array you can have, the bigger the sites that spawn, right? But in this case, it says pirate detection array types, which spawn typical nullsec sites, hubs, havens, sanctums. So this is, you can have a pirate detection array that functions exactly like the pirate detection array that you have right now. So if you want a system to just be your haven system to rat in, do it. That's fine. But there's a new pirate detection array which spawns the new combat anomalies, which are normally there's a new pirate detection array which spawns combat anomalies usually only found in high sec and low sec to provide PvE content for newer players living in nullsec. This is actually really cool because when I first joined nullsec, I was too young to really be able to rat in havens and sanctums, and I felt very out of place because I had basically nothing to do. But if I had a system that spawned dens and I could just run dens and then escalations off of those dens the same way that people run havens and sanctums, that would have been awesome. That would have been awesome. So that's a pretty cool idea. And then I believe that there's also the newer ones that spawn the new combat anomalies with the new escalations and such that is coming. But this is just an example of the fact that, like, you could actually think about it this way. A major empire that has a whole, like, region or two can take a constellation and make this into the new bro constellation, the high sec constellation, right? It has high sec anomalies, it has high sec ore, it has high sec, right? Or like it basically has all of the content that high sec has. But it's just this one constellation that is surrounded by the rest of the empire. That's actually pretty cool. I don't know if this will implement the dynamic of empires getting too large and increasing their points of attack in feasts and famines, forcing them to grow. It's going to, that is one of the things that I'm like, I think it's going to be very difficult to affect how this is going to impact things long run, right? A lot of this stuff allows for the formation of new groups that are closer to like Pandemic Legion that never cared about Sov, but had military forces, so could do things like Metanoxes, all the way to like intricate city builders and stuff. But one of the things I think is important about this is that by allowing you to customize your space, why would you need to grow larger than you need to, right? Like, I know that sounds weird, but like, you should focus on making your space as good as possible and getting people in there. Like, I don't think that sprawl is going to be too required to make this work. Any region will probably have more than enough to make these things, you know, to make a decent empire out of. You know, there's definitely going to be turnover as people like look for positions and stuff. But, you know, like ADMs made it so that people had to rat in systems that they didn't want to rat in and mine in systems that they didn't want to mine in. This kind of changes the relationship between how much space you want and why you want space and how big of a logistical nightmare you want to deal with. So hopefully this will see the rise of more smaller organizations. In other words, organizations that can like operate their cell of space more than anything, but maybe that's just optimism. Orbital skyhook used to extract resources from planets and suns, except for suns are not. Orbital skyhooks don't get built on suns. Replaces player-owned customs offices in present and replaces its functionality. Note planetary interaction PI is unchanged in Equinox. So in a sovereign planet, if a planet in a sovereignty system, if there is no structure on it, you can place a POCO or a skyhook. Okay? If there is a POCO on it, you can place a skyhook. I assume that the skyhook has to belong to the same group that owns the POCO, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Everywhere else will just be a POCO. But in sovereignty systems, it will either be a POCO or a skyhook. And if you place a skyhook down on top of a POCO, it automatically upgrades the POCO into the skyhook. Okay? The balkanization of nullsec. Maybe. Well, yeah. So CCP is basically doing that. They're keeping the current SOV system of Intosis and Intosis fighting, and they're adding these structures on top of it. The only real crossover is the fact that all of the functionality of an ICU, or the iHub, rather, all of the functionality of the iHub is now being run by the Sovereignty Hub, and ADMs are now decoupled from what upgrades you can have. Like, that's basically mechanically the differences to the old sovereignty. The rest of the sovereignty is actually untouched. Power and workforce resources can be routed to Sovereignty Hub. Another thing that we learned, or we got, actually, I think we got this last stream, but we got confirmed. None of these structures, including the Metanox, allows for tether or docking. Okay, these are all just structures in space that you interact with while you're in space. Power and workforce resources can be routed to the Sovereignty Hub via the Sovereignty Hub UI. There's no need to physically transport these resources. Reagents, magmatic gas, and superionic ice accumulate in the structure and must be collected and moved by players. The hit points is going to be comparable to a Raitaru, which is like one of the weakest of the medium structures, with similar onlining, attacking, and reinforcement mechanisms. The only exception is they talked about the fact that one of the things that they're working on, and it sounds like they're pushing for it and will go with it unless they have to do otherwise, is that, nope, that's the Metanox only. Never mind. We'll get there when we get there. Okay. This is probably too small of text. I'll just read it. Step 1. Raiders so this is the orbital skyhook raid flow. Raiders arrive at the orbital skyhook. They have to lock and attack the skyhook's cargo bay and get the shields down to 10%. Once it's down to 10%, the raiders can, in a cruiser or larger, can link with the cargo bay. Immediately upon linking it, a notification is sent to all pilots in the same solar system. 2 minutes later, a notification is sent to all pilots up to one jump away. And 5 minutes later, a notification is sent to all pilots 2 jumps away. 5 minutes after the third alert, the timer is completed. If they manage to stay there the entire 10 minutes, the cargo bay ejects the loot for anybody to collect. If at any time they get outside of 30 kilometers of the bay, or driven off or destroyed or anything, then the theft is failed and they have to restart it. This time, this little loop right here is when the Sinojammer would be active. Yes, you can. No upwell structures can be in Pochfin, Malik. Pocos can be anchored in Pochfin, but skyhooks won't be able to. Can you anchor Equinox moon drills? Almost certainly not, because that would be the equivalent of a Athanor, which cannot be anchored. Immediate Discord notification to the whole alliance. Yeah. Well, these raid pings won't go into the ESI. Actually, they might. I mean, like, I think that the ESI would be able to pick those up. Because notifications, if they're in the notification window, you can pick those up via ESI. But the point is that by the time the ESI is letting you know that this is happening, the raid is already over. Like, the ESI is not, will not give you an update within 10 minutes, almost certainly. This, like, having something read the notification and then send it to the entire Discord, like Space Ghost suggested, is far, 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 far more likely than an ESI ping. Metanox moon drills. Automated extractions of moon ore, but at lower yield compared to manually mining at Athanors or Tatara. Can be anchored at moons in low security, null security, and wormhole space. Cannot be anchored at moons where a refinery is already present. Uses the new reagent, either magmatic, oh, it says either magmatic gas or superionic gas, ice, as well as fuel blocks to operate. So maybe the Metanox is either or. And then single short reinforcement timer. They specified that a short reinforcement timer can be anywhere from 2 to 25 hours. So basically, it's so you set a reinforcement window, right? So let's say I say I want my structure to come out of reinforce at roughly 1700. Like there's usually like a window of time. Like it'll be like 1700, give or take 2 hours. But for the sake of this conversation, we're just going to say that I can set it to come out at 1700 exactly. Okay. If somebody shows up and knocks on my door at 1800, then it will come out 23 hours later, because it'll come out within the 20, like the next 1700, right? If I knock it over at 1600, then it'll come out an hour later, in theory. Okay. So in reality, though, there's a window of time, right? So it's like there's a 4-hour window of time. So if the window of time begins at 1600 and ends at 2000, if I knock it over at, because at least 2 hours or whatever, an hour has to pass. So if I knock it over at 1400, then it will come out sometime within 2 to 6 hours from then. But if I knock on it at 1600, then it'll come out sometime between 22 and 25 hours from then, right? More or less. Some of that might be wrong math, but I think that at least gives you guys an idea of what they mean when they say short reinforcement timer. The big question that I have with this is, with other Upwell structures, we can hack it to discover what its reinforcement timer is going to be. Can we hack one of these Metanoxes to know whether or not it's going to be worthwhile, or when to hit it in order to minimize its time, its timer? That's what I want to know. Oh no, Oki. Yeah, notifications are in the ESI. I know that. That's how we got to keep track of abandoning structures. Nice. Cool. Yeah, okay. That's what I'm saying. Like ESI is always 10 to 30 minutes behind. So it's kind of useful for someone knocking on your structure. It is going to be completely unuseful for someone raiding your skyhook. The reason why the ESI was so powerful. Oh my gosh, Tranquilla Mare 07 on behalf of Ricky, Bobby, Wild Ratels, Random Citizen, Grow, Hill, Merrick, Desmond, Clap Daddy, Wrecker Ball, KK, and Wungus. Thank you and myself, of course. Thank you, Tranquilla, for those gifted subs or gifted memberships. Let's have a little interruption. Y'all like distracting me. I know it. So yeah, the other thing is that the structure itself, as soon as it becomes reinforced, it stops mining. So if you come in here and knock on it, you can disrupt their resource extraction at the very least. Even if you don't show up for the kill, from my understanding, it ceases reactions and everything kind of gets locked in place. Now, there were some people that were misunderstanding this to say, like, because they were talking about how you can loot it while it's reinforced. I think that they meant that by the people who own it, right? It's not like you can reinforce it and then just loot it right there. But you could theoretically, I think, if you see that it's reinforced, you might be able to pull things out. But once it is destroyed, all of the material inside does get dropped. I don't remember whether or not they say that said whether or not it gets locked in there when it gets reinforced. I thought that they did say that it gets locked in there when it reinforces, but then other people were talking about how it can be looted while it's reinforced, which is not right. I think what they do is they lock it in when it's reinforced, and then when it dies, if it dies, it drops it. Oh, here we go. This is probably going to answer it. Hold on. Okay, so you attack it, and you get it down to shield and armor. So you get it down to its hull state, right? It has to take 1 point of hull damage or whatever. Now, what's interesting about the Metanoxes is that unlike current structures, the Metanoxes are going to theoretically allow you to repair them. They are going to have passive recharge on their shields, but in general, like, players can repair these both during the initial attack and in the reinforcements, or in the, you know, the secondary timer. So, like, you could actually come and bring, like, drop like a couple shield faxes during this initial attack and just rep up the shields so that way they can't kill it. And as long as it never takes any hull damage, then it doesn't go into reinforcement. As soon as it takes any hull damage, says only Alliance CEOs and certain folks can turn it off once it is on. That should be true. That's the same about most things when it comes to, like, structures. So it takes hull damage. It goes into a reinforced state, right? Well, sorry. It takes hull damage. If it is in a high-powered structure, if it is in use, then it goes into a reinforced state. If it is not in use, if it is low-powered, then it'll go straight to hull vulnerability and cut straight through. Otherwise, this is that 2 to 25 hour window, this reinforced state. Then it comes out at hull, okay? When it comes out, it's at hull. It has 0 shields, 0 armor. Basically, your job is to try, as a defender, is to get either the armor or the shields back to 100%, okay? So you can repair the armor, and you can repair the shields, and the shields will have their passive regen. So by any of those three, or a mixture of their method, you need to get either armor or shields back up to 100%. And then if you do, then that structure goes back into its initial state, and they have to start over from the beginning. If, of course, they take it down to 0 hit points, then it blows up, right? So what they wanted to do is make it so that both armor and shield logi are equally valid in the process of defending the structure, okay? But again, this is a very aggressive timeline with like 24 hours or so or less before, you know, any given day, you'll have about a day of warning or so. Like, oh, tonight during prime time, we're defending ourselves. So, and, you know, you can burr a lot of these things and get them to shut off. There's a lot of things that ESI does that's really good, though. There's a lot of information that isn't great, but there's, as with most things, it's complicated. Yeah, only the CEO, directors, and members with the station manager role in corporation owning the refinery may cancel an ongoing extraction cycle. That's the same as like turning off any kind of station service, I think. Well, no, you can, so you can assign ACLs for non-destructive actions, right? Like if you need to load ammo in or loading fuel. In fact, like here's actually a really good example. It is easy to give somebody an ACL to load fuel into a fuel bay. It takes a corporal to be able to pull that fuel out, because destructive actions, pulling the fuel out, shutting off, you know, turning off the clone bay, you know, these are things that you don't necessarily want people to be able to do. So those have a higher level of protection. And most of those destructive actions are handled on a corporation management level instead of an ACL level. All right. Next. Is that it? That is it. Very cool. So yeah, lots of really good information. I am very interested in what's going to be coming with Equinox. The more I hear about this stuff, the more I'm becoming excited about it. Did I miss anything else on my notes? Nope. Nope. Covered all my questions. Or covered all my notes, rather. Yeah. So if the old resource extraction methods are still in place, plus these new ones, are we going to have too much stuff? Well, it's a totally different track, right? Like, this is just new resources. Now those, like, if you have a lava planet, you're going to be building your electronic parts on that lava planet to build your fuel block, but you'll also be extracting magmatic gas off of it now on Alliance level. When is the Ashtarothi Nullsec division starting up? We are very much interested in raiding and causing disruption within Nullsec and causing havoc. Whether or not we decide to take sovereignty ourselves, I would have to have a much larger navy at my back to be able to do that. Yeah, this is an entirely different cycle of stuff, right? This stuff needs it's new functions require new stuff, and there are new ways of extracting that new stuff. That's pretty clear. That's pretty fair. And especially since, like, that new stuff can just be turned into, like, sold as a commodity, it means that the system can't get too overloaded. It still can be treated just like ISK, but only in one direction. All right. Let's see. But that's about it for today when it comes to this. I do want to cover the monthly economic report. I forgot to put back up the chart, but I don't think I should. I think we're done with that too. So actually, before we do this, I need to go. Oh, also, before we jump into this, somebody was bringing up at the beginning of the stream. I can't remember. I think it was Seventh Heaven. Just as a side note, as we get closer to the weekend, real life stuff, sciencey stuff. There's a G4 solar flare watch. There's been an extreme, like, several significant CMEs, coronal mass injections coming out of our star. This is real stuff. And so they're expecting a lot of high solar activity throughout the weekend. So if you are anywhere where you can look at the pretties, you should look at the pretties. And if you are the kind of person that, and you might want to take measures to defend electronics against this stuff, make sure your surge protectors are good, etc. Anywho, does it seem like Nullsec might become the punching bag for a while until the hype dies down? Owning Sov is about to get interesting. Well, I think that, like, the act of operating and maintaining your space and living in your empire is about to become a lot more complex. And that's a good thing. Like, right now, it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, this is going to kill low sec. This is going to kill high sec again, or blah, 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 blah. If the only people, look, no, actually, that's the thing. Okay, let's talk about the high level of this stuff, okay? Is this going to kill low sec? Is this going to kill high sec? Is this going to kill blah, blah, blah? Are they going back on scarcity? Why is passive moon mining coming? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's think about this, okay, guys? First and foremost, I want people in low sec fighting in low sec because they want to be in low sec, fighting in low sec, right? I want people in there because they want to be in small gangs and running around and do stuff. I want people to be in high sec because they want to be engaged in high sec. Or whatever they're doing. I don't want it to be that a bunch of people are doing faction warfare because nullsec is boring right now, right? I don't want nullsec groups to be desperate for content for their own people And so are overwhelming places like Pochfin and faction warfare and insurgencies and everything else. Now, obviously, if they want to engage with those things, that's absolutely great. I don't want it to be because nullsec has nothing to offer them, right? Like, people should be in, if nullsec being good means that some of those people are going to go to nullsec, then by God, they fucking deserve a good nullsec. Okay. As long as that does take work, and it does show that this does show that it takes work, and there is interactions. There's that, there is a whole component about defending your space and doing stuff and attacking other places and all these kinds of things. Like, nullsec is an interesting thing to live in right now. And therefore being in a null block is like a thing again, as opposed to like, well, the null blocks are now off doing this other random thing. These cross-pollinations are good in theory, but if it's happening because their space is shit, that's not good, right? In the same way that we don't necessarily want highsec to be worse, so that way people are quote unquote forced into nullsec. I don't want nullsec to be worse either, right? There should definitely be like, yeah, I think I've made my point there. So here's the thing. Is this the return of the reign of the Roke Wall? Is this CCP going back on everything? We went through hell, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, of scarcity. It sucked. But, CCP said, and I agreed even then, and I do now, that it was necessary. We were too fat. The mechanisms of power and accumulation and whatnot had become too big, too powerful, too set in their ways. The game had been beaten effectively and was starting to creak under the weight of these power players and the systems that they used and exploited to gain and maintain their power over people. Scarcity fixed a lot of those things, addressed a lot of things, and bled out a lot of the power, or out of a lot of the money, transferred a lot of ISK from wealthy blocks to non-wealthy people, and also drove out of the game a lot of the wealthier people that had beaten the game, quote unquote, right? So it would be, the cynical look at this is like, well, CCP now has finally come to terms with everything that they've been trying to do for the last 4 years has been bogus. That all of this pain and misery to nullsec has been completely, like, this is CCP being absolutely dumb. This is validation of everything nullsec has been saying. This is what CCP should have done in the beginning. And this is CCP going back on all of the changes by just giving them back all of their stuff, right? I don't think that's what's happening. Because the thing is that, let's look at passive moon mining as just an example. At passive moon mining and the existence of Isogen in nullsec, these two things, right? Because these are two very important pieces of what made the old world work, right? Isogen being, or all the materials being everywhere, and even before that, passive moon mining. Well, the thing is that those situations were problematic, not just because they existed, but because there was no stable growth to build off of that. Okay? So a whole bunch of changes have been made in isolation of those things, right? So it isn't just, oh, look, there's going to be the material back in nullsec. You still have the more complicated industry. You still have the new mining waste system and crystals and the balance of power between, what mines good and what doesn't. You have 80, dynamic bounty systems that make it so that systems need to be either churned or there's there's give or take based on how much you farm into a system. There's all of these other systems that they've put into play now. They've created a structure to grow into. And so now we're seeing that period of growth. We had the period of scarcity, then we had a period of restoration, and now we're seeing that period of growth where players can now go back to really building things up. So they're giving back some of these tools to let them, you know, really build themselves up into a full-fledged society, while at the same time making sure that the process of doing that doesn't damage the game in a serious way, but instead interacts with the game in far more interesting manners, right? This is going back in some ways, but it's also correcting the mistakes of the past in other more critical ways, right? That's why I think that this is really important. And I see this as CCP finally having confidence in what they have been building. Because in 2019, they realized that their systems were bad, and they've been going through this process of correcting things step by step by step since then. And a lot of heavy lifting happened for the first couple of years. And then Uprising was their big showcase of like, we're back, baby, and we're building off of what we've done. And we see a revitalization of faction warfare, and then a growth from that into insurgencies. And now we're seeing them finally, after all of that practice, preparation, and establishment of new systems and processes, moving on to the most complicated issue of all, null security space. And that brings me to why I think this is called the Equinox. A lot of people have been giving them crap because Equinox isn't in the summer, right? Equinoxes are spring and fall. It seems very odd that the Equinox would be that it would be called Equinox. But I think that when CCP set out in their journey of like restarting the expansion system and all that sort of stuff, they talked a lot about their timelines and their plans. They used to have, 4 or 5 year plans and all that stuff way back in the day, but obviously a lot of other stuff has gotten in the way, and a lot of those plans have burned in the past. But a big piece that I saw when they kind of came back and did FanFest again was that they had a plan, and it was a long-term plan. And while some of the details were more specific than others, and they didn't give us a lot of the details, you could tell that they had a rough idea of what the next 2 years was going to look like, and a little bit beyond that too. One of the biggest things that they said was that they were going to spend about 2 years focusing on faction warfare, and that features that would kind of come out from the development of the empires and all that sort of stuff. And that's basically what we got, where a bunch of new tools and stuff came, but it was all kind of from the context of faction warfare and its development, culminating, of course, in insurgency as the kind of the capstone of their second year of faction warfare. So they had 2 years working on the faction warfare main systems, or rather the empire side of things. And I think that this signifies, especially since CCP has said that, this is the beginning of their updates on nullsec, this is showing that like we're now entering into the second half of the plan. In the same way that Uprising through insurgency was the follow-up of the groundwork that was done in scarcity and beyond, so too is what's coming, building on the groundwork that was started with insurgency, or with Uprising and Viridian and insurgency. And so I think that that's why it's called the Equinox, because this is the crossover period. This is when we're moving from focusing on empire stuff to focusing on sovereignty, or like nullsec stuff. And I'm pretty excited about that. Well, when they say kill low sec and kill high sec, what they mean by that is that, the people that are in those spaces, rather than being there doing stuff there, they'll be in nullsec, right? Which is, that's fair. How much of faction warfare has been popular right now because nullsec didn't have anything going on? And I'm totally fine with that, I think the Equinox changes will add a lot of interesting potential for nullsec and avenues for at least minor conflicts, which also make a test for nullsec in my eyes, which is if they don't really embrace opportunities for conflicts, then they're not really interested in conflicts. Oh, man. Yeah, that's the thing. Anytime nullsec is like, oh, but this is about player-driven stuff. Well, you were given the opportunity to make player-driven stuff, and everybody just turtled up. right? So here's round 2. It's going to be a hell of a lot of work for corporations to maintain the new structures operational. I don't know. We'll see. It depends on how big your scope is, you know? Like, it doesn't actually look like these... I mean, if you just have a little sovereignty area, it doesn't actually look like it's going to take that much as far as, like, maintenance, unless you are actively being disrupted. Might get out of your faction warfare if they have something to do in Null. Look. All I know is that, like, so here's the thing, okay? Fraternity is incredibly powerful. They have a lot of territory. That territory has a lot of stuff. But as anybody who has ever tried to use a signal filament in, like, US afternoon, evening time period knows, Frat ain't very busy during their off time. You know? Like, you can have a filament that thinks that it's busy because they were busy, but, like, during their off time, it's pretty dead. That's a lot of territory. That's a lot of stuff to raid. That's a lot of stuff to disrupt with them asleep. I do think it's interesting that, like, a group like Pandemic Legion that was really pushed out by the fact that you need to have null, like, sovereignty and ADMs and all that stuff to make things work in the current system, like, the fact that they can just have metanoxes that they supply by blowing up other people's stuff, like, the fact that that idea of, like, the elite PvPers that don't have anybody besides PvPers, but yet they have their metanoxes because no one else can attack them. Like, that's a thing. I think the drifters should start attacking Sovnol. Yeah, we'll have to, like I said, I have no idea how this is going to impact the politics of Null. I don't think anybody does right now, because you're going to have to go and look at individual planets and individual star systems to see what they're worth. And that's the thing, like, groups like the Imperium, they're not going to be any bigger than they need to be to maximize their value, right? They only sprawl because that's, like, having floodplains and stuff is a defensive strategy. Having renters and stuff that, like, they didn't want to rent originally. They rented because of the fact that the technetium moon mining thing wasn't a big deal anymore. Like, the switch from switch to ADMs and the switch from passive moon mining is the reason why we have the rental systems as extensive as we have today. So it's really going to be difficult to predict, or, you know, maybe some people are able to predict it, but a lot of the people that are just giving their opinion right now, I guarantee you, have not, like, thought through all of the details of the changes and what it might mean when it comes to the way that people relate with each other, especially since there's not enough details that have been given out yet. Oh, that's right. There was another thing. I don't know why they didn't show it. It's not here. Wasn't there one where it was like, I thought there was one where it showed the different upgrades. I don't remember. New system upgrades. Here we go. Yeah, this is what, oh, never mind. This is what we looked at the other day. And these are not necessarily real, but they look probably pretty close to right. Oh, I guess they are. There are pictures. Either way, whatever. I think that's about it. A 10-minute CCP video did say the auto miners would be less efficient than manual mining. Yes, correct. There's no change in resource distribution per se, except for the fact that these planets are now useful in a way that they were never useful before. All right. Let's see. A little bit about the monthly economic report. I just kind of want to go over it. I was looking through it. I don't know if I see anything that really jumps out at me. If anybody remembers anything from last month that I was like, oh, we need to keep an eye on this. But I remember like last month was mostly kind of like a flyover month. I guess we were waiting for the event to start. But this event has kind of been sort of disappointing. By the way, I just put out my video about my rant from that. Okay, April. So we can see basically flat with a little bit low when it comes to production. It's still trickling off with a fall in mining and a flat destruction. The production has shifted more towards nullsec in the last month or a little bit. That continues to be, I think, the same as before. The destruction is more in nullsec, and the mining is more in nullsec. Renter's requesting additional workforce. You require more overlords. Spawn more overlords. All right. There was an interesting analysis about this. Hold on a second, actually. My buddy Drake gave a good evaluation. The mining is at 289 billion, down 18%. Crabbing, i.e. like bounties and stuff, is 18 trillion, down 1.62%. So mining is way down. Crabbing is a little bit down. Destruction is up to 12.51%, and Pochfin to 2.77 trillion. Also the highest ever recorded for the region, which is insane given that there were no structure fights. That is pretty crazy. Makes me wonder what happened. The mining reduction is a bit of an anomaly. It has reduced more than the normal ebb and flow that I would expect. It might be down to megasite prices continuing to drop like a stone. Isogen, however, is relatively stable. Let's see, last month. I mean, there's been a lot of other things. This goes back to that idea of like, well, these miners were probably actually doing other things before, or like, there's been other things to do this last month with like the wormhole war, and I think some stuff in nullsec with Imperium and such, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, the more those groups are doing that stuff, the less they're mining in Pochfin. On the destruction side this month has seen a massive shakeup in the large players of Pochfin. Previous gentlemen's agreement have been revoked, and many groups are specifically hunting each other out of spite instead of just competing for sites. I also need to point out that this has gotten extremely nasty, and in some cases, some players have been permanently banned as a result of out-of-game harassment. That's stupid. Don't do that. Don't make this into an out-of-game thing. I hope this doesn't need to be said, but keep your beefs in game. Good job, Drake. Losses by Pochfin Group. That's actually pretty cool. Who's the big block? Wait. That number doesn't make any sense. Hold on. Oh, so it's 762. Okay. So 762 has lost 575 billion. Got it. Well, keep it up, guys. Stabilization of Pochfin. And then my understanding is Angry Mustache is not going to be doing an evaluation this month or this week, whatever. So jumping back into it, we see mined over time. Things are very flat. Asteroid ore mined over time. We see Delve at 6, at less than 5, just over 5. So that's down some mining in Delve, with Vale at about the same as it was before. Gas volume mined over time, down a little bit, with almost all of it coming from wormholes. Likely this suppression force is the war, you know, a lot of wormhole activity is going towards conflict instead of resource extraction. gas volume by region. Iridia, Vale of the Silent, Lone Trek. Vale of the Silent, Iridia, Placid, Lone Trek. And a little bit down across the board. Ice volume over time, we see an increase in nullsec ice and almost a slight reduction in highsec ice, which matches this mining increase across the board. Ice volume by region, Forge, Evershore, Metropolis, Domain. Forge, Evershore, Metropolis, Domain. So yeah, pretty much the same. For me, I just got super quiet. Maybe I was looking the wrong way. Moon ore mined over time. Pretty much flat. Nothing really interesting there. Vale of the Silent and Delve at just over 5. Vale of the Silent and Delve a little bit lower, but basically the same. And imports and exports. We see, is there any other big standouts here? Delve is the biggest exporter outside of the Forge. Is that normal? Yep. They were last month before that too. How about the month before that? Nope, second to last. Or third to last, I suppose. Where's getting all the big imports? Conid? Wait, is that normal? Conid is down here in like 10th place the month before that. And oh, it is second place the month before that. Remember, this is imports versus exports, so this is a very volatile number depending on what's coming in. Like, look at how much activity Essence has, but it has such a small net because it's basically the same in both directions. And there's Essence there. All right. Isks and faucets, 45 billion in commodities versus 47 trillion. 47 trillion to 45 trillion. So commodity market is down. That will likely change. Well, this event has commodities. So that'll likely, we'll see a spike in commodities this event, although with its popularity, maybe not that big of one. Ratting went from 41 to 42, so ratting has increased. ESS main bank payouts went from 21 to 22, so that's ratting in nullsec that's increasing at about the same amount. Triglavian invasions went from 18.6 to 18.3, so slight dip in the amount of Triglavian invasion stuff, like the Pochvin stuff being run. Sancha incursions go from 14.4 to 14.2. I heard that there was some incursion drama that could have a small uptick, or downtick rather. Agent mission rewards went from 4 to 3.8, so slight dip in people running agents. Pirate fobs usually doesn't change by much, but yeah, pirate fobs went from 3.2 to 2.9. House of Records, Ministry of Internal Orders, Republic Security. Oh, Federal Intelligence is at the top. Federal Intelligence, House of Records. Wait, more people are running Galente. That was last month. Yeah. I keep being surprised by this. More people are running the Galente what are these things called? Home fronts. More people are running Galente home fronts than Caldari home fronts by just a little bit. With Republic Security Services being lower. Wait, where's... Oh, no, Ministry of Internal Order is at the top. So Amar is being done... how's that possible? Ministry of Internal Order went from 2.2 to 2.8. So we see a significant uptick in Amarian home fronts being done. That's very interesting. Amarian home fronts have taken the lead, it would seem. Historically, it's been Galente pretty sizably, but now home fronts, well, because of the cost of insurance, home fronts have taken over insurance and the amount of net income to the as a faucet. Weird. And keeping on going, we see very little change in much of anything when it comes to the commodity markets. Sleepers had a dip down. This is probably the beginning of the war, but we do see a cash out. Fine. Commodities are sold to NPCs, so their prices don't change. It's just how much of them are being sold to people. Bounty prizes are... we see an increase in bounties, and it kind of stays increased the entirety of the month. Commodities are sort of all over the place because there was no new commodities last month, more or less. And here we see, like, incursions are a little bit suppressed than they were before. Invasions are about where they were at, with a little bit of a downtick. And yeah, overall, a lot of stuff is just kind of flat right now. Although we do see an uptick in people spending on skills and blueprints, which is interesting. We do see an increase in the total wealth, more than we have previously. We saw it started to flatten out. Now it started to go up again. And it does look like it is a combination of corporation and character, with actually more of it being accounted for by an uptick in character, because corporation's pretty flat. So a lot of this actual, like, sculpting of it, if you map this out like a straight line up through here, actually it would be even a little bit like that. So yeah, the character increase has kind of pushed up character increase in money supply. Velocity of ISK continues to trend slightly upward, which is good. I don't know what else to tell you about it, but besides that, but people are buying and spending more. I know that, like, it's very possible April. I'm not 100% sure what would have, like, generated an increase in ISK velocity exactly last month. If you do have a theory, go ahead and comment down below. Mineral price index remains very, very high. Expect this number right here is the number that's going to go down, right? You could see it drop down to as low as this or whatever. It's going to go down once these nullsec changes hit, when nullsec are able to get some of these minerals in nullsec again, instead of having to export it from highsec and whatnot. Bottom one is the one without the plex sale. Oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. I always get that one wrong. So yeah, this uptick is almost exclusively plex related. That's what that is. Got it. More buying and selling of plex related items, which makes sense because they've been having sales for those. Got it. I'm with you now. Consumer price index. Yeah, we see an increase in accessories, which I believe is the plex and other plex related stuff. Mineral price index, we see an increase in low-end minerals and a decrease in high-end minerals. Again, we're going to see that change. Like this low-end mineral path is probably going to be the one that gets hit the worst with the changes that are happening. Decomposition of primary producers. Let's see. The big one is raw moon materials. Raw moon materials has gone down, which is probably good. And that represents pretty much the entirety of the drop there. Secondary producer index. We see salvage materials down. Yes, and that's only going to go more down through this event. And blueprints and accessories are down as well. Ship and module prices are recovered from the previous spike in January. Here's another one of the ones that I like to compare. So 2 months ago, we have 13 and 5. Then we have 15 and 5. And now we have 13 and 2. So a big decrease in class 6 wormholes. 1.2, 1. Yeah, pretty much the rest of them are not necessarily as changed. For the most part, it's just a decrease in class 6 wormhole loot. Now, for the materials, 0.7, 1.3. It's pretty steady with an increase in class 2. We see like class 2 goes from 0.8. Oh, no, that is, hold on, that's the same. 0.6. It's a decrease in the other one. So this is a decrease to 0.6. Class 4 is up. And gas remains about even as the same. So we see a shift. Class 4 is higher. Class 2 is steady. Class 3 is lower. Class 5 and Class 6 are kind of steady when it comes to material. Good number of C6 farms have been burned in the war. Yeah. And then these are the biggest fights, which I'm sure we'll be able to find, like Rick's Javix's free for all and whatnot. But yeah, that's about it. Like, I mean, I looked through this earlier that we're kind of doing a lighter dive into this, just because I feel like there's not that much to talk about when it comes to this. Asteroids are now valued at 70% refining value. The following graphs are affected by this change. That might be, well, that's good that we didn't try to compare some of these things then, like month to month. Overseer's personal effects, sleeper components, Triglavian data, rogue journal analysis data, and bounty encrypted bonds were removed from the CPI. These changes have minor effects on the following graphs. So again, we didn't check month to month. We just used the graphs that were here, so that's fine. Okay, great. All right, well, that about covers it for the monthly economic report and the news. Anything else that we should cover today? Yeah, man, let me tell you. I hope they fix this event a lot. A lot of people are having fun doing it, but then they lose their motivation really fast. Because once you figure it out in any level, then it's like, okay, now what? Is there any new news? Nope, nothing there. All right, well, in that case, I think it's pretty safe to say I have been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put EV into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for checking this out and for liking the stream, commenting, engaging with me, sharing it with other people. You know, here we are to raise literacy in EVE Online. There's lots of things to look forward to when it comes to the event, or to the expansion that is coming, things to prepare for. We did do a Kikimora roam last night, and I do plan on doing more roams and more stuff as is the convocation and as the invited. So if you are interested in flying with me in space, please make sure to come and join our Discord and our groups. We are here to help you and everyone maximize player engagement with EVE Online. Or if you just want to come on, you should hop onto our Discord, ask questions, get involved, hang out with the community, and give yourself flagged for YouTube videos, so that way you get alerted whenever my stuff goes live or whatever, just in case YouTube stuff isn't working right. Also, if you haven't yet, or if you're just returning and you haven't checked it out, you can get 1 million free SP if you're just starting out, or whatever. It doesn't matter how old your character is. If you've never used the link before, you can use the link that is down below or in the chat. That will get you 1 million free SP that you can allocate into any skills that you want. It's about 40 days of training as an alpha, 20 days of training as an omega for free. And it goes to support one of the people that supports this, that makes this channel possible. Like, as in like people that work for the Alliance or work for the production of the show. So very much thank you to all of you who do use those codes and who do join the Alliance and come and hang out and make things possible. Love you all. I'll be in the Discord. And I will still be handing out filaments for people who need it. If you do want to get involved with the event, you need filaments, you need stuff to build the filaments, come talk to me in Dodixie. I got it for you. Otherwise, I do want to say thank you to Bash and Tranquilla Mare for your gifted memberships, as well as Ari Danica and Bad Boy Smooth for the shirt, and all of my supporters, all of you guys that have been part of this and shared around. Thank you guys so much. I've been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. And I feel like I'm missing something again. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, and then I'll remember it. Until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine. For every city